Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Mighty Mysteries on a Mighty Blaze. I am Hank Phillippi Ryan, your host, and I am so pleased to be here today to talk to one of my dear pals. It's a great
Hi,
joy
Hank. Hi,
yes,
Hank.
to talk to Alafair Burke, whose new book, Find Me, is out today. We are so pleased that you are here today. You have to have the coolest pub day
Thank
on
you
the
so
planet.
much.
Is it's like one,
One,
one, one, two, two?
two, something like that. If I were cooler, remember too legit to quit. I should have something like one, two, two, something like that. I don't know. I'm not
I
clever
think
enough.
about these pub day dates all the time. Wouldn't it be good, cool to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that?
Yay.
Anyway, congratulations. I have
Thank
to
you so
tell you
much, Hank.
all that Find Me is on every single most anticipated book list, and that must be so much fun to see. How is your pub day going so far?
Pretty good. It is not going as I originally expected it. COVID had little plans for me. So I don't know if you remember this, Hank, but I had pushed my pub date from last year to January of this year to like, let's just get through COVID. And here we are again. So anyway, I thought I was going to be in a hotel room in Houston by now, but that didn't happen. So I'm actually staying at a friend's house. This is their daughter's room. It is surf themed. So, but I'm very grateful to have this place to stay. It's in Florida, so we were able to eat outside in the sunshine today for lunch. So, making the best of it.
That's nice. It's 8 degrees here in Boston. I want you to know.
I
So
know. So I'm not going to complain about being in a very
exactly,
sunny, beachy place.
exactly.
So, yeah, it was 80 something like 80 degrees today, and we got to sit in the sun and have a safe lunch. And then my launch, like the official, I guess this is official because this is the first thing going live. And then tonight at 7:30 Eastern time, I'll be with Megan Abbott and Laura Littman with Politics and Prose and books and uh, a whole bunch of independent bookstores. A crowd, kind of one of those crowd things. So if people don't get enough of us right now, that they can keep reading and hearing about Find Me Tonight if they've got nothing better to do. Hi,
We
Anissa.
Anissa is here, and Sharon Carlson Person is here, and Debbie Babbitt is here, and Carla is here, and Brenda is here. The gang is all here to welcome you and to celebrate your wonderful book, Find Me.
Thank you.
As I was saying, it's been on all the lists, all the most anticipated lists. And, you're a pro with this, and you've written 20 books, but it must still be wonderful to put out a new novel and see the acclaim for it.
Yeah, like I said, I had a book out about a year ago, but it was co-authored with Mary Higgins Clark, and so that's always a shared thing. And we had just lost her, and so didn't have the kind of normal happy feelings necessarily of the launch since she wasn't there with me. But so this has been my first launch for a while, so I'm excited. Like, kind of forgot what that felt like. Like, the book's been done for a long time, so it kind of just you move on to your work, and you're like, someday that book will come out, and like it's suddenly here, so it feels pretty great.
That's wonderful. And of course, that you use the word normal. What on earth is that? What does that mean anymore? And yes, of course, we miss our dear Mary Higgins Clark, and you were so lucky and blessed to be able to work with
Yeah.
her. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Quickly, let me just say, if you have just joined us today, this is a Mighty Mystery on a Mighty Blaze, where we are talking to Alafair Burke on her pub day about Find Me. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic, which now seems like, forever ago, by the
Been a
fabulous
bit.
powerhouse, yeah, doesn't it? Powerhouse of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us talking about books, to keep the community together, to bring us together, and to allow us to talk to wonderful people like Alafair Burke. And let me just quickly read you Alafair's bio in case you don't know her, but I see Sylvia and Gail now joining, so many people joining today. I do know that you know her, but just in case you don't, Alafair Burke is a New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 novels, including The X, which was nominated for the Edgar Award for Best Novel. She has been called a genius for plot, and I think I have said that myself, actually, and one of our greatest contemporary mystery writers. Oh, I have certainly said that. She is the
Keep
current
talking.
She is the current president of Mystery Writers of America. She's also co-authored, as we were just talking about, the best-selling Under Suspicion series with Mary Higgins Clark, a former prosecutor. She is now a professor of criminal law, and that shows up so gorgeously in this book, which we are indeed, you lucky readers, giving away a copy today. This very book you're going to get, not this one, not the book that I read and marked up and even
Oh my goodness.
turned
some
down.
homework.
So, but to win this book, leave a comment for Alafair during the program for the next 35 minutes, and we will announce the winner at the end of the show. And if you don't win, come back next week and try again. And let me just say, run right out as far as you can go online and get this book for yourself, because you do not want to miss this. It is a triumph. It is a treasure. It is twisty and surprising and unique and a real page turner. I really love this book, Alafair.
Thank you so much, Hank. Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about, Booklist says a skillfully constructed, delightfully twisty thriller powered by Burke's trademark strong, relatable heroines and realistic foes. Yes, Booklist knows its stuff. I want to talk about Amnesia. I want to talk about friendship. I want to talk about strong women, identity, about legal justice and moral justice and personal justice and truth. But first, let's just talk about the plot. Where did this book come from, and what is it about?
Well, I've been fascinated by memory for a long time. And my senior thesis in college was about the unreliability of eyewitness testimony. That's a running thing that I talk about as a law professor and a legal scholar. And as kind of like one of the arms of my fascination with memory are these kind of clusters of cases. And there's not a lot of them, but they do happen in real life, even though people kind of think of it as a familiar trope in fiction, of people who lose their identities. I mean, they turn up often in very surprising circumstances with no explanation, claiming not to know who they are or how they got there. And naturally, that's met with some, skepticism, yes, right? But by the people around them. And I've always kind of thought, like, the longer the time goes by, right, the more likely it is the person's telling the truth, right? Maybe you would lie and say, oops, I have amnesia, to get out of something for a week or a couple of months, but, not for years. So the kind of the book, The Me and Find Me, right? Oops. The Me and Find Me is Hope Miller, who goes missing. And what's interesting, one of the many things that's interesting about Hope is 15 years before she goes missing in the present, she's somebody who suddenly appeared. She was found severely injured in thrown from an overturned SUV with no identification and no cash and no explanation of who she was or how she got there or why the car she was riding in was stolen in another state. So people met with skepticism, but as weeks went by and months went by and even years went by, she had to just move forward with her life. And so she chose a name, Hope Miller. She settled into this small town where she originally turned up with no explanation, finds her way forward, becomes a restaurant manager, lives in a very nice couple's garage apartment, kind of has all these people looking after her. But everybody who's looking after her knows her story, right? That 15 years ago, she just suddenly appeared, and she's in this small town where, everybody kind of thinks of her as poor Hope, the woman who has no past and has no memories. And so she wants to start over again. So she moves after having a nice weekend in East Hampton, which is a beachy place I love. She falls in love with it and decides, you know what, I'm going to move to this place, this beachy place where I can be anonymous. I won't be the poor girl without a memory with amnesia. Like, I'm going to make it work by myself. And so she moves out there, and shortly after relocating goes missing. And her best friend, Lindsay, is the one who is determined to find her. And so you said you wanted to talk about friendship as well. I think the friendship between Lindsay and Hope, and Lindsay's utter determination to not give up on her friend and to not let her go and to find out what happened, which might require finding out who she used to be. I think that's the heart of the book, is the connection between these two women.
Oh, I so agree. And it's interesting too, because you were saying that the me in Find Me is Hope Miller. But I do think that there's a bigger picture of Find Me as well, because so many of the characters in the books are finding themselves, even if they don't know that they're looking for that. At the end of the book, there are realizations by so many characters that they have sort of found themselves don't you think?
Yes, very much so. You know, this book's for people who can tolerate and hopefully love multiple characters and multiple points of view. Because even though I think the heart of the book is Lindsay and Hope, the book introduces you to other characters who's very much like Lindsay and Hope, kind of are at a place in their lives where maybe they thought some things that were in the past were going to stay in the past, and now all of their paths are kind of converging in this moment. So sorry, it's not COVID, I just have a tickle in my throat. All of their paths are kind of converging into this. I can't obviously spoil
exactly.
it.
I mean, I
but
love multiple points of view in books, and it is a very difficult thing to. I'm trying to get my light not to shine on this board. You can see
it's very shiny.
It is very shiny and beautifully so. One of the things about writing multiple points of view is that it's a juggle for an author, and the key is to make the story be complex and in depth the way you write it and not complicated. And I can tell you all, readers who are here, Janine and Gail and Sherry, welcome, 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 that it is complex, but not one bit complicated. This is an easy story to get in, and you will be enchanted by it as it goes on. Rewinding a little bit to what you were saying about memory and identity, I marked a place, one of many places in the book. Let me just read you this, which I thought was fascinating about memory.
Hank, I'm just going to say, because I'm sure everybody has noticed me pulling at my hair, there's a very long explanation for why I'm having a bad hair day on my launch. But while you read, I'm going to get that stray piece of hair stuck in there because it's driving me crazy. All right, go on.
You see, I love this.
I'm done.
This is one of the reasons we love Alafair.
I'm like, I can't have this big chunk of hair like hanging off this off. Okay, we're done. I can have bad hair. I can't have this going on. Okay. Go on.
You look chic and beautiful, and I was not noticing that piece of hair, but only on Mighty Mysteries.
I was noticing it.
And your launch day, Alafair. I mean, talk about chaos. Talk about change. Talk about being able to balance this crazy, chaotic world with this moment that's already crazy enough. Every launch day is just nut city. And you have had to balance and juggle a lot of things. So I hope that the joy and adulation and the success of this
stuff that would have upset me 2 years ago, I'm just like, I don't care. I'm gonna fix my hair in front of all y'all. But I didn't mean to derail you. You were about to read. I had two choices. I either had to fix it, or I was gonna try to find a pair of scissors and just cut it off because it was making me crazy.
Oh, that would have been. I'm glad we're taping this, because that would have been a total classic. That would have been, and you wouldn't have cut your hair in front of Megan and Laura Lippman tonight. So you can do that here in Mighty Mysteries.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that event, and I hope that we can put that in the comments, your event tonight at Politics and Prose, with a raft of other independent bookstores. And we here at Mighty Mysteries love independent bookstores.
Yeah.
So we are.
But anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Hey, go on.
That's okay. Everybody interrupt me. All right. So what I was going to read to you, and I think this is so interesting about identity and what happens to a person who has amnesia or seems to have amnesia or does have amnesia, not giving anything away either way. So Lindsay, one of the main characters, who is the one who found Hope when she was in this car accident and got amnesia. Over the years, Lindsay had researched whether a Jane Doe could establish a new identity under a new name, a legal identity. She was stunned to learn that it was all but impossible. The scenario wasn't common enough, and the concerns about fraud were too strong. The federal government didn't even have a process for tracking unidentified people who were still alive. Is that true?
It is. And I don't normally have that much exposition that's kind of just put in there, but like it needed to be said, because I can't have anyone read the book and be like, this is crazy. She would have a driver's license by now. She would have a social security number by now. She wouldn't have to live her life in this kind of limbo where she has to kind of live in the shadows, and she has to be worried about, whether every time a police officer pulls up behind her, we all kind of like tap our brakes or whatever, like, what did I do? But especially so for her, because she doesn't have a driver's license, her car's not in her name, and it's what makes her so dependent on other people, right? But it is true, and that's basically the reasons for it, because if you think about it, I said there's not many cases, but they are real, where people live long periods of their life without knowing who they are legally. But it's not that many cases. And so there's really no incentive for the government to come up with a system for a person to create a new identity without disclosing what their old one is, right? I mean, you can change your name, that's fine. You can do those kinds of things, but you have to you've got to create, like, it's almost like a chain of custody almost, right? Like, so if I want to change my name, to something else, they'll know Alafair Burke became,
yes,
Helen Smith or whatever. But to just create a new identity from whole cloth, it's so fraught with danger in terms of fraud. I mean, people would use that for shenanigans to no end. So it just doesn't exist. And then that didn't surprise me. What surprised me, though, and again, it speaks to the uniqueness of Hope's situation, is there's not even a database to put these people in so that they might be found. So there's a database for missing people. There's a database for people who are found dead, but who are unidentified, right? So you could run Hope, for example, through a database of missing people and hope that she matches. But there's not the reverse. There's no database for people who are found alive, but who are unidentified, even those people do exist. So some states actually do have them, but it's not a national database.
I just thought that was jaw-droppingly interesting, because I'd never thought about it. And you can see that I marked it, because it really is thought-provoking, and it really allows you to get into Hope's head and Hope's dilemma, and the idea that she needs to find herself and find out who she is, because who wouldn't want to do that? So her journey is fascinating and wonderful. And I love that it's grounded in reality. That makes it all the more wonderful as far as I'm concerned. This is
well, and
go ahead.
Oh, and it makes Lindsay's ability to search for her harder as well, right? So if you went missing, Hank, which none of us could tolerate, we would all be looking for you, right? They would run your credit cards. They would put out, an alert, a BOLO alert or something to look for you. But they would look for your license plate, right? Going through bridges and tunnels, like all of the kind of data systems would be looking for you. Whether your ATM gets used, but she doesn't have any of these things, right? So it makes her harder to find. And like at one point, Hope's car isn't really Hope's car. It's in her friend Lindsay's name. And the police aren't taking the search seriously enough for her. So she thinks about reporting her own car stolen. So at least they'd be looking for her car. But then that's basically getting the police to go looking for her friend more as a suspect than as a potential victim. So it just complicates the things that are within Lindsay's ability to do as she tries to find Hope.
I mean, this is one of the things that I think informs your book so gorgeously, is this deep knowledge that you have about investigations and legal procedure and the law, as well as the human heart. And so the way that you weave those things together in your books is so wonderfully done. You have a moment here where someone says, okay, but you always say there's formal law and there's the way things actually work. And that is such a wonderful balance that you do in this book. Talk a little bit about that: moral justice, legal justice, personal justice.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my students, as I still teach criminal law and procedure at Hofstra Law School in Long Island, and I tell them, look, you need to know all the things in the case book. You need to know all the constitutional rules. You need to be able to write the briefs. You need to be able to argue to the Supreme Court. But, nuts and bolts law is very different. It's getting to know systems. It's getting to know people, right? Like, so you could be, the best Supreme Court litigator in the world. you wouldn't be the person I would hire to get me out of a traffic ticket. To get out of a traffic ticket, you find the person who does the traffic tickets in that jurisdiction, who knows all the cops, who goes in the hallway and just gets it done, takes care of business. So that part that you referred to is, Lindsay, who is a lawyer. There's most of what she's doing in this book isn't lawyering. She's being a friend to Hope. But she tries to use all of her lawyering skills, like to get the answers that she wants and to make demands upon the police department. But, the police department doesn't owe her boo. And it's her boyfriend is reminding her, like, hey, you say there's formal law and there's the way things really work. And then she kind of goes around the formal legal systems to start putting pressure on people.
And I love that because it gives her power. Her knowledge of how the system works allows her to take control of certain situations. And she draws on that because there's so much in this book about vulnerability and power and the balance of power and how someone forces or encourages or makes someone do something or not. And she uses the law and her knowledge of the law for her own, for power, as I keep saying, for power. I mean, this is a standalone, and it's a gorgeously written standalone, but your fans will love some of the extra little things in this book. Talk a little bit about why you decided, talk a little bit about that and why you decided to do that and how that all Rubik's Cube together.
Yeah. So I've been working on the idea for this book for a really long time. I mean, normally a book from kind of like the little tiny beginnings of the idea, I'll kind of get the idea for the next book while I'm working on the current book. Then I'm kind of ready to start writing and then I'm done. So maybe from the little tiny germ to completion might be 2 years. I think I've been thinking about this book since like 2014.
Oh.
And I finished it in 2020. So, a 6-year process. And I knew that it was a way for me to bring in Ellie Hatcher because I haven't had an Ellie Hatcher series book for a while. But and it's not giving it.
If there's anyone who hasn't read an Ellie Hatcher book, then go do that right now. Well, not right now, but after this, tell us who Ellie Hatcher is so we can.
So there's five books in that series, and she is an NYPD homicide detective, and her partner is J.J. Rogan. And part of her background, and it's just backstory, it's just her backstory, is that she grew up in Wichita, Kansas, so she's kind of a fish out of water to some extent in New York. But her father was a homicide detective who spent the tail end of his career working on a serial killer case where the guy was never caught, at least not caught during his lifetime. And then he was found killed by his own gun at the side of the road. And it was determined to be a suicide, but Ellie has never accepted that. She thinks her father got too close and somebody killed him. So that's kind of her backstory. And I hadn't visited Ellie for a while. And when Lindsay is looking for Hope, she finds out that she was last at this house where she was working for a realtor. And she notices what she thinks is a blood stain. And then she uses her kind of Lindsay manipulative magic to trick this police officer into kind of humoring her. Like, if it's not a blood stain, go do this to it, because she knows all the procedures. And so he thinks, like, fine, I'll just humor this lady and get rid of her. And then when he shines the light on it, it actually is blood. And then she knows how to pressure him, like, well, now that you found blood, you can't ignore it. So she's kind of like, now you have to do this and now you have to do that. But in any event, once he runs this blood through the national DNA database, he gets a hit.
And now you have to stop.
No.
Now you have to stop. Now you have to stop. No.
Okay.
Don't say any more, Alafair.
No more.
We're talking
but
about.
It's on the book jacket. It's on the summary. It's not a spoiler. It's
all right,
not a spoiler.
So if it's on the book jacket, you should get the book.
It's not a spoiler. Oh,
okay. It's a wonderful part of the book.
But that's how Ellie gets involved. So people who have missed Ellie, it is not an Ellie Hatcher book, but Ellie Hatcher is very much a part of it, and you can spend some time with her. And I love it when that happens. Like Tess Monahan shows up in Laura Lippman's book last year, Dream Girl, and it was just like the minute she shows up, I'm like, hey, I know you. Hi, girl, I missed you.
Exactly so. And also it allows Ellie to also find herself a little bit as well. She's been on a search for a while, and it very gorgeously all comes together. If you just joined us, you lucky people, we are talking about Alafair Burke's Find Me, a book, a wonderful psychological legal thriller that has just launched today. Yes, we have a double picture of it, and we will give away a copy of Find Me before the end of the show. So please leave a comment or a question or just some applause or standing ovation for the fabulous Alafair before the end of the show. You have about 15 minutes for that.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about female friendship in this. It's, there's so much about women friendships that are questioned or tested or how they're forged or what they mean. And they're so sort of examined in a strange way, sometimes in real life. Talk a little bit, and you have such good friends in your life. Talk about where that theme came from.
Yeah, well, so thank you, Hank, as a friend, for doing this book event with me. I feel like all of the tour events I have scheduled are kind of a testament to female friendships, because it proves that people are there for each other. But the quote at the beginning of Find Me is from Thelma and Louise, where she says, "Louise, no matter what happens, I'm glad I came with you." That idea of your ride or die, doesn't have to be your spouse or your romantic partner, but it could be your female best friend. And I said the heart of the book is Lindsay's commitment to hope, and we suspect that it was mutual. Part of their origin story of how they met is, as you mentioned, Lindsay is actually the one who finds Hope at the side of the road and saves her. And at some point, she describes the things that she happened to know that actually did literally save. She didn't just find her, she literally saved her life. And they were around the same age. Nobody really knows how old Hope is, but they at least appeared to be around the same age. And instead of just leaving her at the hospital, she felt like she couldn't leave. Like, she kind of instantly became her person. Like, I'm going to be this woman's person until she finds out who she is, which lasts all the way into the present, 15 years later. So they have this very unique bond from the outset. But I think it's kind of a universal female relationship to some extent, maybe people who are outside of it don't really understand like how close they are. So when Hope disappears, to Lindsay, it's just obvious. It has to have been something has happened to her, like she's in danger or she's dead, because she would never, ever let me worry about her this way. She would tell me. And the people who don't really understand the relationship, their theory is that Hope just wanted a fresh start. She even said she wanted a fresh start. She moved away. She told Lindsay, I need to be more independent. I need to have a fresh start. I need to be anonymous. I need to have people not look at me and feel sorry for me. And she thinks that, other people are telling Lindsay, takes them a while to break the news to her, that, when Hope was saying she needed a fresh start, maybe she meant from you too, most of all, because she's too dependent on you. And maybe she told you she was going to East Hampton, but she went somewhere else, like to just start over literally anew, even without you. And that's what Lindsay just cannot accept. So the two of them have this commitment to each other. So, part of what Lindsay has at stake is kind of proving that Hope would never do that. Hope would never abandon her. So.
And that is an essence of female friendship, that people understand each other, that friends understand each other, and that people make decisions about what to do, but there are lines that would not get crossed. And sometimes that's difficult for other people to understand, especially people who may be envious or jealous of that relationship and would rather have it, for whatever reason, would rather have it be over. We're almost out of time. We're going to take questions in a minute, but if you have just joined us, we are talking about Alafair Burke's twisty new compelling thriller, Find Me, which is just out today on 11122. One of the things that you say in the book, and I wonder if this happens to you in your cases as a lawyer and also in writing. One of the people, who I won't say who is, says he thought he'd felt the boom, that singular moment when a case suddenly bursts open and pieces of evidence explode into view. I've had that feeling in writing a book, when you think, that's what this is about. Is
that's going to happen? Yeah.
That experience?
Yeah, I don't want to turn. I imagine as a journalist, you probably had that feeling of like, I just found the hook. Like, initially when and the analogy is so aptly put, like when you're plotting a novel, you might have pieces of it, right? But you may not even know what it's really about yet. One of my writer friends, and I won't say who it is, it's like, so I'm at that part of the book where I'm completely done, and now I'm rereading it and realizing what it's actually about. um, I think with a case, it can feel like that because initially what you get is little pieces of evidence, right? Little pieces of fact, and they might point you one way or the other, but it's a question of how do they fit together. And it's almost like when you do a puzzle, right? Like everything just looks like little pieces, but then when enough of it is put together, you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. I've got it. And so the scene you're talking about, he thought he had the boom moment, and then maybe he didn't.
And maybe he didn't, but I do think that, I mean, what struck me about that was the idea that that sort of thing could happen, that epiphany happens. And it does happen in journalism. You're so completely right. It's what you work for every moment and cross your fingers for, that the universe will provide. But again, as your friend said too, in writing too, sometimes in the second draft, I think, oh, that's why he said that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what it means. Do you have that too?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you tapped into it about Hope's not the only person in the book who has a before identity, right? I mean, just by nature of her amnesia, it is inherent that she only knows herself as her current self. She only knows herself in the last 15 years. And her past, like the way a lot of people kind of want to put things in the past, or, you know, I've evolved, or I'm a different person now. You don't literally forget who you were, but you kind of put that person there and you shut a door and say, I am now current me. She's got that literally happening, but it wasn't until I kind of reread the book, and I'm kind of like, oh, there's a lot of people in here who are just kind of living their current lives and trying to avoid things in the past. And so you see lots of other characters kind of dealing with those themes. But the interesting part of searching for Hope's identity, and again, put yourself in someone else's weird shoes where you don't know who you used to be. Maybe it's better not to know, right? If many of us voluntarily say, you know what, I want to think of my best self. I don't want to think of myself on my worst days that are hopefully are in the past. So is it a gift maybe to not know that, to not know what you used to be like? So to some extent, like when, you know, Lindsay's almost afraid to find out too much of the truth, because what if she finds out something bad about Hope that she'd be better off not knowing?
And Ellie is on the same search, that maybe she'd be
Yeah,
better off not knowing the truth.
not knowing the
And that is
truth.
what this,
Yeah.
that is the wonderful balance in this book, is people in search of the truth, but maybe not, but maybe they want to, and whether we
Yeah.
all as human beings sort of need that, whether we're reluctant about it or not. There's one last thing that I want to read you from the book, and it is from your acknowledgments. And you talk about two ideas for this book, which we've talked about coming together. And you say, and somehow, because brains are magic, these two ideas eventually came together into a single story. And I've heard Sue Grafton talk about how brains are magic. How do you feel about that? What do you really think about that?
I think brains are really weird. Like we have like this mush up in our head that allows us to do incredibly creative things. I mean, I think a lot of people in the room right now are writers. Sometimes we sit there and like we want to like bang at the computer as hard as we can to make the stuff that we're trying to think of come out, and it doesn't work. It's amazing how many times, like if I leave and like go take a walk, or like go give my dog a bath, like it's when you turn it off that suddenly like something in your head goes boom, like this is what you were looking for, this is what you wanted. So many times like I'll struggle and like I can't think of a word, and if I just pause for half a second it comes to me. So I lived with two ideas, the amnesia story and then someone else's story, and they kind of found their way together. Yeah, my book The Wife, I don't know how many people have read that. It was the same situation. I had a character's backstory for years. I just wasn't sure what to do with it, and I wasn't sure what scenario to put that character in to have a book in the present. And when I found it, it was magic. It was like, okay, off and running, like this is going to work. So.
I mean, sometimes your imagination and the universe or the muse or whatever it is just provides an idea which wasn't there a minute ago, but now it is fully formed. And that is just such a moment in each of our lives when that happens, no matter what we're doing, is, the idea of an idea.
Yeah.
What even is that? And that is probably
Right.
a long discussion for another time, because that's my favorite thing, my favorite magic thing to think about. And that's why I think we both do what we do from what we did before. I was a journalist, you were a lawyer, and
Yeah.
that kind of storytelling is so similar, that search for heart.
There's a lot of similarities. Yeah, a lot of similarities.
Let's see if we have some questions. I know that we have. Carlos Suto is saying the wife was so good, and Vicky Gregory is saying, either
Thank you.
find me. When I look this way, I'm looking at your comments, you all. I'm not looking away.
Yeah.
Sherry's saying, what do your students think about your books, your law students? Do you get a lot of questions or asked to sign a lot of books?
That's so funny, because I was obsessed with my professors when I was a student, but they don't seem particularly obsessed with me. I don't think they even know. I got a bunch of emails this week from students who are like, I didn't even know you wrote books. But I will say, after finals were over, I got a lot of it's never them that, like, I read your books, it's their mothers. It's like they're like, my mom is such a huge fan, and she's like obsessed that you're my professor. Like, they're so embarrassed. I'm like, tell your mother she is awesome, and I will sign as many books as she's got. So yeah.
People come up to me and say, oh, I've been watching you since I was a little girl. And I think, great.
Yeah.
But it's all good, all good, all good. Let's have another question. Where do you find the time to write, given your day job?
Day job, yeah, I know. Hank, I know you're a busy lady too. So I actually only teach in the fall now at the law school. So they've been pretty great about letting me keep my tenure, and I'm still a full member of the faculty, but I just do my teaching in the fall, and then I'm on leave. So right now, for example, I am on leave. So it's been a nice balance. I think it's good for me, at least, to kind of, I like teaching, but it kind of keeps me structured. It keeps my feet in the legal waters so that I don't get out of date. And it's also nice to be surrounded by all these people who, when I started, I wasn't much older than they were, but I'm now twice as old as they are, which freaks me out. So it's probably good for me to know all these like 20 somethings.
Well, that's the math of life somehow. I don't even,
Yeah.
I wrote in one of my books recently, I had someone say, that's dandy. And my editor said, I don't think they would say that. I don't think they would say dandy. So I'm like,
yeah, dandy.
I'm old. Take it away. What was Anissa always has a wonderful question. How does she do this? What was the most interesting piece of research that you uncovered for this book?
I don't want to repeat myself, but to me, I was really interested in the data bank piece of it, that there's really no collection of information about people who are out there who don't know who they are. There's just, they're living in a black hole. And there's some analogies in there that I compare the way that she is living to people who are undocumented, right? Who don't have legal documentation and yet live complete lives in the country. And so I actually did a lot of research on that I found the parallels to Amnesia. I know it's a very unexpected comparison, but in terms of just how they having to live your daily life if you don't have a legal existence, and how challenging and kind of stressful that is.
And I do love how you took care of that question. Why don't they just look in there must be a database of this? Well, no,
right.
No, it isn't. And there's a lot of other wonderful memory research in this, the idea of amnesia and the fugue state, and what happens to people, and why memories do or don't ever come back, and what might happen about that. But you will all have to read Find Me to get all of that fabulous info and all this marvelous page-turning story. We have time for one more question, I think. If there's one more question, or we're going to give away this book. Let me just tell you that Alafair Burke's Find Me, a wonderful, twisty psychological thriller, is out today. And the audience question is, what are you? This is the hardest question. What are you reading now?
I can answer this very easily because my laptop is sitting on top of a bunch of books. So I literally just finished The Match by Harlan Coben, but that's an advanced copy, so lucky me. And then my other read is the second in these books. But no, that's the first one. I already read that one. This one. Do you read these? They're fun.
They're in my TBR
the Thursday Murder Club.
They're in my TBR pile. Got them.
It's like a group of seniors in a senior living center like that solve crimes together. It's super fun.
Yeah, I've heard that it is really, really fun. And Janine Woodworth, you are the winner. Yay. Lucky you of Find Me. So send me your info and I will send you this very book. The rest of you, I know it is now irresistible for you to run right out now, or tonight from Politics and Prose and the other independent bookstores that are going to be sponsoring the panel with Alafair Burke and Laura Lippman and Megan Abbott tonight. Do not miss that.
Thank you.
Absolutely not to be missed. And I will end this today by showing you when I was sent this novel, there was a postcard in it, which says on the back, "Find me, a new book for a new year. I hope 2022 allows us to see each other soon. Hang in there." And so Alafair,
hang in there for 2 years.
And Happy New Year to you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank
you are marvelous.
doing this. It's so lovely to see you.
Completely,
even if it's on a screen.
I know. Next time,
Thanks.
next year in person. And for all of you who joined us today on Mighty Mysteries, thank you so much for being here. Ooh, I almost forgot to tell you that we will be here next Tuesday, as usual, with Janice Hallett and The Appeal. Do you know this book? It is all in like emails and texts and memos and things like that. And it is gorgeously structured and quite unique. Talking about gorgeously structured and quite unique, Alafair Burke's Find Me, which we talked about today. Until next Tuesday, you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank